All right, so in this problem, we're kind of separating things out into different areas, such as some land, maybe some land improvements. We're going to have some, let's see, we're going to have some natural resources. We are going to have some items that get expensed. And I think those are the big ones. So let's start just with those and let's see where we get with them. And that way we can kind of see what all these different elements really are going to be for us. Okay. So first things first, we own some timberland. We own 9,000 acres. Now we paid $1,400 per acre. So 2009, we bought a total of 9,000 acres at $1,400 per acre. So we spent $12.6 million in 2009. If we're taking a look at this in 2009, we're seeing that a portion of this really gets attributed to two different things. So we're going to separate out this 12.6 into two different categories. One is the land, right? Let me actually drag this down a little bit. One is going to be the land. So a portion of this 12.6 million is going to be strictly land. It won't be depreciated. It won't be depleted. It'll just sit there. They're saying that if the timber, if those trees weren't on it, it would be worth $400 per acre. So let's see what the land is valued at. 400 per acre. So 3.6 million for the land. Which means that there is a 9 million additional amount, and that 9 million is for the timber, the trees that are on that land. That would not be land improvements. It would actually be natural resources. So that 9 million would be considered natural resources, and those would end up getting depleted. Now in 2010, we built, what was that, 84,000. So $84,000 worth of, what was it, lanes and roads. So when we build these lanes and roads, which category would that fall into? That would be considered a land improvement. Now, as you know, land improvements are depreciated. So those would be depreciated every year. And I'm going to make a little note off to the side. 30-year life. Also, it tells us that every year, how do we want to put this? Let's just do this every year. Just a note. We're going to be spending $3,000 on spraying and $7,000 on maintenance. And you have to ask yourself, if we're spraying and we're paying $7,000 to maintain, this $10,000, how would we treat that $10,000 in their accounting books? So really this $10,000, this is something that's considered regular maintenance. It does not get put in land. Land improvements are natural resources. It actually does not get capitalized at all. This would actually naturally be expensed. So the full 10,000 we would just expense every year. No capitalization there. Now let's read the next one. During 2011, they logged 700,000 board feet. So let's make a little note. Logged 700,000 board feet of estimated 3.5 million board feet. So really, we are going to be depleting a portion of our natural resources here. So let's go ahead and figure out what the depletion would be for this particular natural resource. So the total cost of our natural resource up to this point is $9 million, right? Now that $9 million cost, let me ask you this next question. What would be the cost per board foot, right? So that 9 million, we get 3.5 board feet out of this. So the cost per board foot would be approximately, let me see if I can actually drag this out for a bit. Ugly number, but $2.57 about, right? So if basically every board has a cost of $2 and so cents, we're going to be multiplying that by how many feet we actually logged. And that means, see what direction this has to go in? There you go. that means that technically we logged 1.8 million out of that natural resource. So really what's happening here is we are saying, oh, 1.8 million was logged, and we're actually taking that value away from the original 9 million. Right? So our depletion was 1.8 million. Yeah, actually, let me show you that separately so you don't get too confused later on. Let's keep it that way. So we have some depletion. And now let me update our balances after the depletion, right? And I'm just going to do it specifically for the natural resource. We really have a few different things going on here. So after we deplete it by 1.8 million for those 700,000 board feet that were removed from the timberland, we would end up having 7.2 million as our new natural resource balance. Now, it tells us that in 2011, we planted some seedlings. All right, so when we plant seedlings, what would that be considered? Land improvements, natural resources? Would it just be expensed? What are we going to end up doing with that $100,000, right? So in 2012, when we do this seedling planting, that $100,000 is going to turn into timber, right? So the cost of planting these seeds ends up getting included. This is an important idea about natural resources. When we go ahead and we add to what is in the natural resource, what we are putting into it, that cost gets capitalized with the natural resource. So now we have a new 2012 natural resource balance. After 2012, we would now have 7.3 million as our natural resource balance. So now that we've kind of organized our thoughts on everything that's going on in exercise 1119, let's see what the problem's actually asking for. A, determine the depreciation expense and the cost of timber sold related to depletion for 2011. So let's start with the depreciation expense. So we're looking specifically for 2011. And now let's look at these and see which of these would get depreciated. Land does not get depreciated. Land improvements does. Natural resources, those do not get depreciated. And then these are just expensed. So that's the end of that. So really, we only care about the land improvements. And we learned earlier that the land improvements we spent $84,000 on, and it has a 30-year life. So we are going to be depreciating $2,800 every year for 30 years. The other side of this is the 2011 depletion. We actually did this. I'm not going to call it an expense because it's not really what we're going to be doing here. So when we have this depletion, let's take a look at what we have here. 2011 depletion, we already solved this. Remember, the way we solved this was we took our cost of 9 million, we divided it by the estimated timber that was on the land. So then we found a cost per timber, timber per board foot. And then we multiplied it by how many board feet we actually logged. 700,000 for the year. So depletion, 1.8 million. Okay. So that's it for A. B says, if Stanislaw has not logged since 2011, Stanislaw has not logged since 2011. If they logged and sold 900,000 board feet in 2022, when the timber crews appraiser, so look, now we're saying, okay, those little seedlings that we planted, they've grown into trees. Our existing trees, those have grown bigger. So now an appraiser came onto our land and took a look at our timber and said, this could produce about 5 million board feet. Okay. They want us to figure out the cost of the timber sold in relation to depletion for 2022. So let's take a look at B. We're trying to find our 2022 depletion, which in this case, we're talking about cost of goods sold since it was logged and sold. So if we're taking a look at 2022, same idea as what we were doing here back in 2011. One, we have to take the cost of our natural resources. At this point in 2022, the last updated note we had on the balance of our natural resources was 7.3 million. So that is our new cost. 7.3 million, and how many board feet could our timberland really produce? In this case, if we take a look at this estimate here, it says you could produce 5 million board feet with that one natural resource. So we can find the cost per board foot here. So about $1.46. And now ask yourself the question, okay, if it's $1.46 for every board foot that I log, how much is my total depletion for the period? Multiply this by how many logs or how many board feet you actually logged, 900,000. So we find that our depletion for 2022 is 1.314 million. So really, there's a few different aspects of this problem that are actually really good for critical thinking. It's understanding what falls into each category, how you would treat it, and then also being able to follow the balances as they increase. And then also, of course, actual depletion, right? But just pay close attention to the depletion portion of the chapter, read what goes into the cost of an asset when you deplete, understand how to deplete, so on and so forth. And if you have any questions, please feel free to let me know.